The Shadow Defence Secretary John Healey joins me now. Good morning, Mr. Healey.
Good morning.
Does Dominic Raab's assessment of the military situation on the ground seem reasonable, given what you know?
Yes, the Russians may have seriously miscalculated the strength of the Ukrainian military. More importantly, Putin has miscalculated on the strength of Ukrainian national identity and their determination to resist in the face of this invasion and in the face of Putin coming in and killing people, bombing their cities in a sovereign state that Russia itself promised under international law to respect.
Where do you stand on the Ukrainian appeal for a no-fly zone, whether over the whole of Ukraine or, as has been suggested by some people, a limited zone of Kiev and the humanitarian corridors?
Yes, NATO has ruled this out, and the most essential thing is that the Western alliance remains together. It's done so because establishing a no-fly zone will mean shooting Russian fighters out of the sky. It will do too little to protect the Ukrainians from the artillery and missile fire now being directed into civilian neighborhoods. And the big risk is that it gives Putin the grounds to rapidly escalate this conflict. And of course, it gives him the get out of jail free card to explain to his own people why his military campaign and his invasion in Ukraine is not going well.
I'm going to be talking to a person on the ground in Ukraine. Tell me how I explain to her why we are not responding, because I hear what you've just said, but from her point of view, and I imagine from President Zelensky's point of view and most of his people, this feels like the West saying, we are happy to support you, except in order to do the thing that will really protect you.
This is genuinely, deeply, deeply disturbing, very difficult. And the hard fact is that the hard fact is Ukraine is not a member of NATO, so the collective security commitments that we have don't apply. But Britain has led the way rightly with Labour's full support in providing the military assistance for Ukrainians to defend themselves. When I was in Ukraine in January, the Ukrainians were very clear. They knew it was their fight, and they were determined to resist Russia in a way that Putin has miscalculated. So the best thing that Britain and Western countries can do at the moment is to step up the military assistance, as we have been doing, to help the Ukrainians defend themselves. Support.
Do you agree with Dominic Raab that, so forgive me, do you agree with Dominic Raab's scepticism that a cornered Kremlin could step up its use of greater and more unconventional firepower, chemical, biological weapons, even nuclear weapons?
Before I answer that, I just wanted to finish what I was saying before, because the other thing that we must do in maintaining the international condemnation of Russia is also to press for an immediate ceasefire and then the withdrawal of Russian troops. But importantly, and this is a job for the United Nations, to make sure that we have humanitarian corridors maintained into these cities under Russian attack. In terms of Putin, we have seen from his record in Chechnya, where he bombed the capital Grozny almost to the ground and then sent in hit squads to assassinate individuals that continued to resist. We've seen in Syria, we've seen attacks on our own British soil, as well as him seizing the nuclear power plant in Ukraine, how dangerous this man is. And at the heart of this war is the danger of escalation. And the discipline and unity from NATO and from the West in putting in tough sanctions and making sure that we reinforce our NATO eastern flank, but saying to Putin, everything now depends on you being willing to negotiate and to start to de-escalate. It's Putin that's escalating, and it's Putin that must de-escalate if we're going to find a way through this war.
That isn't quite an answer to, if I may say so, to a question I asked. Dominic Raab said he thought that all of the talk about a nuclear alert and so on was just rhetoric. He would not go there. Do you agree?
Well, at times of extreme crisis like this, what senior political figures say matters. Putin has been used to ramping up rhetoric. He's also been willing to step up very aggressive military action, as we've seen in other countries. It should redouble our determination to support the Ukrainian resistance, but also to try and find a negotiated solution as we remain united as a Western alliance in saying to Russia, you may be making short-term military gains in Ukraine, but you will fail in the longer run.
You've criticised the government for being slow on sanctions. I talked to Mr. Raab about that a moment ago. What would Labour do about General Shoigu or indeed about Mr. Abramovich, neither of whom are on, as far as we know, on the UK sanctions list?
Yeah, we've been arguing for some time, for nearly 6 years, since the scale of the dirty money that helped keep Putin in power washing through London, that action's been required. And for 6 years, we've been arguing for the economic crime bill that the House of Commons only tomorrow will get to debate for the first time. So the sanctions that the government has been willing to put in place, the legislation it's had in order to do so, has been faulty and flawed for too long. And so that's why Keir Starmer this morning is saying to the government, look, finally, this economic crime bill is important. It will give us some of the legislative and economic weapons we don't yet have, but it needs toughening up. And if the government will work with Labour to do that during the passage of this legislation rapidly through the House of Commons and Lords, we will give them full cooperation in doing so.
This invasion has forced, I think, many people to rethink stances that they've had about things for a long time. Sweden now plans to spend more on defence. So does Germany. Will Labour support a significant increase in the UK's military spending?
Well, Labour backed the big increase in capital spending the Prime Minister announced in late 2020. I would expect to see a big boost to defence in the budget in 2 weeks' time. The government must respond to increased threats and increased threats to our security in Europe, just as Labour did when we were in government after the 9/11 attacks on the Twin Towers.
John Healey, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning.
Thank you.